World Trade Center has received billions of dollars in subsidies. And we have seen barely any affordability from these funds, which the LMDC was supposed to, as part of its mission, create.
So I would say that one of the issues in actually getting people into public housing is that we've created too many silos of applications, and that the current housing authority in New York City is a failure.
Everyone knows that the Penn Station expansion will cause homelessness, and we're trying to prevent it. So I appreciate everybody's efforts on this meeting today.
Well, as you know, we're here to share knowledge and ideas and resources to identify the problems and find solutions to homelessness crisis. So we're all here as friends and for that effort, and that's how we should approach it. It's a discussion.
Okay, so we've just had an 8:30 meeting. I'm just going to give a very quick update of what we discussed at our policy meeting today. There were two things. The first thing was about our health committee and what actions we're taking as a result of a number of things, particularly the takeover of Medicare by private equity firms. Some of our actions are, there's new flyers, we're going to update our press release, we're going ahead with further education. Wanufi, who is one of our members on our committee, is going to develop a template that we can work from for our press releases and try and get the word out. There's a rally coming up next week, and it's about it's called the Cross Union Retirees Organising Committee. It's meeting on June the 16th at 12 noon, Broadway, Murray Street and Park Place in front of City Hall. And what they're doing is they're presenting an open letter to Mayor Adams, signed by numerous City Council, State Assembly members, telling the mayor to allow all New York City municipal retirees to maintain their traditional Medicare and Medicare supplement free of extra fees, as has been the case for many years. And despite the fact that they've won all the lawsuits, Mayor Adams is proceeding with a legal appeal to switch the 250,000 municipal retirees in retirees Medicare benefits to a inferior privatized Medicare Advantage plan. So the retirees don't want to be switched, but here we have the mayor trying to switch them. And then we spoke about, the second thing we spoke about was our committee development. And I know that at our last meetings over the last 12 months, we've been talking about how we can build our committees and our coalitions. So today we went one step further with defining those committees, and we're still working on those further, and hopefully the next policy meeting will have a bit more in terms of what those committees mean and how we're going to bring coalitions together to make them stronger. Okay, over to Dan then from Ryan Chelsea. Dan, have you got an update?
Recently approved has been vaccinations for under 6 month to 5 year olds. So we're still waiting for guidance from the CDC for that population to get vaccinated. Okay,
Rue from Help NYC.
Good morning, everyone. Rue Parkin from Help NYC Executive Director here. It's good to see everyone this morning. I just have some quick updates from us. The Housing Voucher Initiative has been meeting bi-weekly for about 3 months now. And we're working to educate landlords, real estate brokers, and agents and voucher holders about housing voucher programs in New York City. We meet bi-weekly, and we're currently in the discovery phase in the work to produce a guidance document for housing voucher holders. The initiative is made up of people who are directly affected, realtors, brokers, and agents, and a couple landlords, and also the mayor's office and Ideas 42. Our first, as I mentioned, our first deliverable will be a housing voucher holders guidance document in late summer, early fall, that will walk people through the rehousing process, define terms so they're educated and empowered to use the same language that the real estate world uses, so they can navigate it better. Also, we will be including SID, source of income discrimination information, what it looks like, and how to report it. If you're interested in hearing more about this initiative, please let us know. I'll put all of this information in the chat shortly. We started our community outreach program this past weekend Some of you saw it. I know. Who was it? Jennifer saw it on the internet, and we partnered with WISCA for WISCA Rocks the Block up on the Upper West Side, and it was a successful event. We got to speak with people who really want to help the people in their neighborhood, but don't know the resources in their neighborhood. And we connected them with those resources, and also with directly affected people. We had a couple people experiencing homelessness stop by our table, and we're able to connect them to some services. If you have a community fair, resource fair, any type of public engagement, please let us know, and we'll gladly come and do some outreach or set up a table. Or even at your programs. If you have programs in Midtown, we'll definitely come during your distribution times. Also, we started a pantry bag program. Like this weekend, we put over 20,000 meals. 20,000 meals went out with our pantry bag flyers. And if you would let us put our flyer in your pantry bag during your distribution, we will send 1 or 2 volunteers to help out with that. Our street sheets are actually materializing. I'm so excited for this. A couple organizations like CUCS and other organizations across the city that do outreach are partnering with us to build these street sheets up. So since we already have the data on the programs in the city, why not produce these street sheets to give out to y'all for free? We can print them for you, or we can just send you the PDF. We don't have a sign up specifically for these yet because they will be updated quarterly. But we will have a special sign up where you'll automatically get the PDFs into your email or notified when they're updated, so we can arrange to drop off the prints to your programs. Or if you're individual, we can do that as well. And if you're and also, if you are new and have never heard of Help NYC and provide low barrier entry point services in Midtown, please reach out to us so we can get you listed. There are several listing partners on us. Julia from Shower Power, Danielle and Asia from Chelsea Clinton. I'm trying to see if there's anyone else on here. But we have a bunch of partners in Midtown. So thank you, everyone. It's good to see Sharon back from down under. So,
Drew, have you seen our hard copy of our street sheets?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
No, actually, I haven't.
You haven't.
I don't.
But
yeah,
we gave you.
Yeah, I've seen it on camera.
Okay. But we gave it to our info. I'm just wondering what the difference is between yours and ours, and how we can make either ours better and yours better or whatever. But I know we gave you some info from our. But yeah, maybe if you give me maybe we can talk and you can let me know.
Ours are going to be much smaller than yours. They're going to be a folded half, and they're going to be broken. There's going to be one street sheet that is specifically for those experiencing street homelessness, to get them connected with entry-level programs that can help them. And then we're going to break it into, just like our website is broken out, into borough section type, service type. So we have on the first distribution about 10 different ones covering Manhattan North, Midtown, Manhattan South, South Bronx, East Brooklyn, East Brooklyn, and Western Queens. So, yeah.
Okay, thanks so much for
No problem. Thank you.
Julia is up next. Julia from Shower Power.
Hey everyone, very excited to announce that we are back in Midtown offering free showers and hygiene products and laundry vouchers to anyone who needs it. This year we moved from 48th to West 46, around the corner from Ryan Chelsea Clinton, between 10th and 11th. We operate Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays from 8:30 to 1. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, but you can send any referrals our way.
Sure. And Julia, you have
address you broke out.
I'm sorry.
Repeat the address, please.
542 West 46th Street, next to the Salvation Army thrift store.
And Julia, I guess you need some street sheets from us to
If they've been updated, we have some left from last year.
Okay, cool. Well, we got some new ones being updated. We're adding a couple of things, but you can use those for now. Great.
Is there maybe a flyer, Julia? Hi, it's Erica. Is there maybe a flyer to send out or?
Yep, I can share that with the group after.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Okay. And we'll post that too. If you have a flyer, we'll put that in our newsletters. Anything else we can do to support you, Julia?
No, just help us get the word out. Since we moved locations, it's been a little slow to start.
Plenty of volunteers and.
Yeah, we're doing all right there.
Okay, cool. Always.
I just got one question. Is there transportation there at all? I know that might be a big reach, but I just thought I'd ask.
Yeah, unfortunately, no. It is further west and a bit more of a hike for our guests, but we don't have any transportation available.
Thank you.
Okay, and we're still looking for a permanent spot, Julia. Just to let you know. I think
Us too.
we'll keep looking. It's sometimes it's tough. There's a lot of things are the pricing and then sometimes what we want to operate there is not desirable to some of the landlords, but we'll get past that. Okay,
Rob, in the chat box, you had a point about the discrimination income. Did you want to quickly do an update and also address that point?
Just quickly. So it's an issue that has been resonating in the city because the city has a Human Rights Commission, which has a fair housing office, which is supposed to oversee that issue. Unfortunately, it's not staffed resource-wise or human-wise, right? So it doesn't function well. And even when it was functioning at a level that the city called desirable, it took a year for a case to go through that process. So there is now a lot of discussion going on about source of income discrimination. People are challenging the administration to properly fund this, group so that it can be effective. But the city ends up getting vouchers that it's sitting on because landlords are refusing to take them. And especially the Section 8 vouchers, if you don't use them, you lose them, right? So it's an issue that is resonating with the city. There are a couple of groups that put together that an illusion of choice report, Neighbors Together, Unlock NYC. They actually built an app which folks who are facing source of income discrimination can plug information into the app the minute they face that discrimination, and it's all gathered, and that's how that report was created, through that app.
Oh, that's great. That's super. Because we had discussions on this in our previous meetings, and of course, Charisma can tell you story after story.
Well, I know Charisma very well. There's also a rally Thursday morning at City Hall around this issue, 9 a.m. on the steps of City Hall. The groups will be out there with the rally.
Rob, what's the name of the app?
The app, you would have to look up Unlock NYC. It's part of their organization. Just if you Google Unlock NYC, it's also in that report that I just posted in the chat.
Oh, okay, great. I'll find it. Thank you.
Is that Rob? Is that this Thursday?
Yes, it is. This Thursday morning, 9 a.m.
I just have a comment about chat. When people put things in the chat, you're unable to copy and paste those notes. So I know, Sharon, that you have them, but I like to make notes during the meeting, but I can't copy and paste them and put them in notes in my program. I guess for privacy reasons, just so everybody knows, we have to figure out another way to get that information out there.
The 3 dots that are in the chat, if you click on that, you can save the chat at the end of the call.
And Jen, when I do the recap, I include all the relevant parts of the chat in the recap. So if you go through the recaps, you'll find all of the info from the chats too.
I just want to add to what Robert said. Unlock NYC, the housing voucher initiative is co-led with Neighbors Together, and Unlock NYC is leading our SID section. And they should come and present here, actually.
Ru, I'll put my information in the chat. We should talk. I know them very well. It's a student of mine from the New School who's one of the founders of that organization.
Awesome.
Well, let's have them here. Let's have them here next meeting, if we can. Ru, you want to ask them, connect with Rob, and
yeah, I can shoot an email to Ashley, and Rob, send me your information.
Great. Super.
Great. Thank you.
Can I ask Rob, can you put your information in chat? I'm sorry to interrupt. This is Derwin. We have a number of our constituents, our clients have vouchers, and that's what they're facing on a lot of occasions. So if you can please thank you.
Yeah, and RevCorps, you're from RevCorps, right?
Yes.
Yeah, feel free to give us some dates for you to speak about what you do too. Okay, we have to move on here.
Yes,
we have-
Eric.
Hi, thanks so much. Yeah, so once again, my name is Eric Straza. I am the Mid-Manhattan Community Coordinator for the Manhattan DA's office. So really quickly, just wanted to share two updates, two things that are open to the public and things that we're really trying to get the word out about, both of which concern something that is at the top of mind for many people right now, specifically with the events that occurred in Buffalo, Texas, and even 2 months ago in Brooklyn. So this is something that we're doing to address gun violence, and it'll be something in partnership with the NYPD Department of Community Affairs. It's actually a gun buyback that is occurring in Central Harlem. Now, I know this group is Midtown South specifically, but it's a citywide event. So we encourage anyone who would be interested to participate. It will be located in Central Harlem at the Soul Saving Station Church, which is located at 302 West 124th Street on Saturday, June 25th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Now, this will give community members opportunities to surrender their firearms anonymously in exchange for a prepaid gift card, the amount of which will be determined based on the category of firearm that is surrendered. So again, we're really trying to get the word out about this. We estimate, just to share a statistic with you, that each gun that is recovered and surrendered will have saved 3 lives throughout the life cycle of what would have been that gun on the streets. So another thing that we're doing kind of on the other end of gun violence is to address gun violence trauma and healing from it. So this will be the 4th annual Art of Healing event. This will also take place in East Harlem, but again, we encourage anyone who would like to join or attend to do so. The event is tailored to provide a method of healing from gun violence trauma through the creative arts. So we'll have things like music, food, dance, art activities, things like that. And it will begin at 12 p.m. And the event will last till 4 p.m. And it takes place Saturday, June 18th. And we have more details to follow on that. But for both of these 2 items, we actually have flyers that we can share if anyone wants to help get the word out. We'd really appreciate it. I can link those in chat, and then I'll also link my contact information in chat in case anyone has any questions or wants to follow up with me about anything offline.
Great.
Sure,
Thank you. Giovanna, are you here from Community Speaks? Okay, if she's not here, Giovanna wanted us to do some more of those surveys that she spoke about at our last meeting. If you haven't got the link to the surveys, email John and I, and we can send those to you. And of course, that's to help New York officials gather information about what we need in terms of mental health and health support. Kimberly, are you here? Did you want to speak from the New York Hotel Trades Council?
Hey, yeah. We're at 44th and 8th, and since the pandemic, we've just noticed we see a lot of drug deals going on outside, a lot more homelessness, and just a desire for a bigger police presence in the area. They also just put up MTA trailers outside of our business, which has become a big spot for drug use and yeah, just a lot of crime in the area. So we just wanted to speak up and just voice our concern about the uptick in crime and see if there's anything we can do to also help out with these organizations that are trying to help the situation as well.
There is, but that's going to take a little bit longer conversation.
Yeah.
We don't push the idea of policing. We can, of course, pass on things, and we see it as a social issue. We see it as a outreach issue. We see it as an economic issue. We're looking to get to the core of the problem, and there is some things that you can help with, and we can speak to that.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you so much, John.
Okay.
And is Smitty here from Open Hearts? Okay.
I can just say a couple things if he's not
Oh, great.
here.
Thank you.
Yeah, so if people aren't familiar with us, Open Hearts is a group of neighbors with 5 chapters across the city, including in Midtown, that seeks to do what it can to welcome homeless neighbors in the neighborhood and advocate for low barrier and supportive services in the neighborhood. Our Midtown chapter has been active in May. We've connected with and put together care kits for a couple of shelter sites in Midtown. And we recently had an article in the city about the expansion of open hearts throughout the neighborhood that I'll copy in. If anybody here is in Midtown or anywhere in the city, we'd love to have you involved, and I'll put the link there too. And also for people and to spread the word to people who are unhoused also, we're here to support in any way that we can.
Great,
I have a
thanks.
question. Do you service Chelsea?
Yeah, Chelsea, we have 14th to 59th is kind of the Midtown chapter.
Okay.
We're not direct services, but yeah, any neighbors who are in that area are sort of part of the Midtown chapter.
Can we request outreach in a specific area in Chelsea?
They don't really do outreach. Go ahead.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I mean, we work with like different shelter sites. So if there's a shelter in that area that needs resources, we can kind of organize to provide those in kits and different things. Yeah, but we're not an outreach or direct service provider ourselves.
Yeah. Well, Sharon and I volunteered to help them pack.
Yes, thank you.
And then also I've been over there chalking the streets. So you guys do some great work, and you guys are great support, especially when it comes to press, especially when it comes to a lot of NIMBY outreach. You help even that playing field, that discussion, and that's very important.
And it was a great article in the city too on Thursday, May the 26th, about open hearts. So congratulations on that. Very nicely written too.
Yeah, Susan.
If I could say, you helped us a lot on the Lower East Side with connections to the press, which was very valuable. So I'm gonna say continue that, and thank you.
Yeah, we have to kind of get together when we hear these voices that scream of Band-Aids, scream for Band-Aids. And so it's very much appreciated, Bennett.
Now, Vittoria, over to you.
Thank you. I just want to quickly follow up because Open Hearts actually really helped us downtown as well in the financial district when during the pandemic we wanted to open a homeless shelter down here, and there was a lot of pushback. So really appreciate the work that you did with us to help us make it more welcoming. So thank you for that. So I'm Vittoria Fariello, and I am a member of the Coalition for 100% Affordable 5-World Trade Center. For those of you who are not familiar with it, it is the last site to be designated at the World Trade Center. And last year, the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation, the LMDC, announced that they had accepted an RFP to build an 80-story luxury apartment building. They offered 25% affordability, which would be a total of about 300 apartments. Now, downtown has lost thousands of affordable units. We've lost 3 major complexes: Independence Plaza, Southbridge Towers, and Gateway Plaza, which come to about 5,000 units by themselves. So when they made this announcement, the community reached out and said, this is not okay, we need 100% affordability. So they reached out to me as their district leader and said, can you help us organize? So when we first started talking to our representatives, they were all very much, they looked at us like we had 2 heads. You want 100% affordability of an 80-story building. And, but once we started speaking about it, this is public land. It is publicly owned. The World World Trade Center has received billions of dollars in subsidies. And we have seen barely any affordability from these funds, which the LMDC was supposed to, as part of its mission, create. So we started talking to our elected officials who were very resistant at first, but then we started going around to our local clubs and to our local tenant associations and speaking to people and saying, hey, would you join us in pushing for this? And we really came very far. So at the moment we are now, we've met with the agency a number of times, and we have gotten a commitment from Representative Jerry Nadler to help us find the funding, as well as to write any legislation necessary for this funding to actually build an 80-story, 100% affordable building. I think the real lesson here is that we know how, that if we work together, we can really make things happen. And I think pushing, one of the biggest obstacles was really getting our representatives to see it as something feasible and something that that people wanted. So that was what we did, was to reach out to each of these different groups. And as a district leader, I reached out to other district leaders and then was able to present to the county committee board, the executive board, our cause, why we wanted this, why we thought it was just. And the county committee signed on to a letter. All 72 district leaders signed on to a letter that we sent to, that went directly to Kathleen Hochul, to the Governor Hochul, showing support for 100% affordable housing at 5 World Trade Center. And, you know, to us, there's a real sense of justice in this as well. So one of the asks is that there is a preference for 9/11 survivors, but also equally important to us as a coalition is that it is a question of racial justice as well. We have, this site is resource rich. We have beautiful parks, great schools. It sits on top of a transit hub. We have, you know, walks from Wall Street and the City Hall and all the courts and the Civic Center, which are all jobs for people who could then live in a neighborhood that can offer them this kind of, you know, offer them all these wonderful resources that they wouldn't otherwise get. And right now there is a real, I believe one of our members did a calculus, but I believe it's 8% non-white in Lower Manhattan. And it's really in the, I'm sorry, Community Board 1, forgive me, Community Board 1, which is obviously very important to distinguish that. And we'd like to open that up. We'd like to have these resources, and this is a perfect place to do it. So again, one of the other things that we've been doing is going to our political clubs. We have the Downtown Independent Democrats, the new Downtown Dems, the Grand Street Dems, Village Independent Democrats, Chelsea Reform Club, and I believe CODA, I'm not sure. But so these are the political clubs that have all signed on with us as well. And this is something that is really important to be able to build these coalitions, to put these, put the pressure on our representatives to make the right choices when it comes to this. So would love to have, obviously, all of you sign on to support this. It's a real opportunity. It's the last opportunity at the World Trade Center site. There has been, as I said, billions of dollars spent at this site, and we haven't seen affordability for it. And I think this would be a wonderful opportunity for us to address this issue and provide affordability downtown. And the coalition also is very clear about what we mean about affordability. While we don't have exact numbers, we are not talking about AMI. We know that that's not what is proper. We need to have tiered, but we want deeply affordable housing here. Because again, we have resources that other places don't have, and it's the perfect place for it.
Yeah, I don't think you'll have any trouble for us to participate for affordability. We've talked to Victoria about affordability, and we discussed our views, which is everybody here at the committee understands. Apparently, they use it a lot in marketing, and even our representatives use it a lot, and incorrectly. So yeah, and then we talked about how we might break down more silos and network. And any questions for or any?
Yeah, I'd like to comment on it. I think first of all, there might be more coalition building if it weren't so partisan. I mean, it sounds like a very partisan coalition. The other thing is, just to play devil's advocate, when you look at 100% affordable, and of course, what does that mean? Does that include middle class affordable? Does it include moderate? You will find certainly one problem we have here is it often helps increase the segregated schools. And also, the Furman Center has done a lot of studies on this, on the outcomes for students in mixed income housing as opposed to 100% affordable. I think one of the problems is that we have all been faced with market rate, between 80% to 60%, which increases the gentrification, which is bad. But you're now looking at the other extreme instead of also looking at middle class bands, moderate bands, as well as deeply affordable 3 bedrooms, which we need. But I think there's a lot of education that needs to be done to at least look at these issues and address issues. I do understand you don't have the school segregation issues in CB1 that we have in CB3, but that is part of what happens.
Susan, do you mean to say we need to look at middle-class bands as well? Am I hearing?
Yes. When you say 100% affordable, of course, no one really knows what that means. So we generally mean we all desperately need very affordable housing.
Right. Yeah.
And what we're given the choice of seems to be 100% very affordable or something like 80-20 luxury, which furthers the gap and is really bad. And there's not looking at, maybe a very small band of market, but, lots of bands of middle and various bands of affordable, which seems to lead to better incomes and seems to not lead to the kind of segregated schools that we have in the Lower East Side.
Victoria, Susan, let's see if you agree with me, or the way I look at it is our city employees make under 50,000. Our teachers are making under 50,000. Our medium wage is under 50,000. I do not see where I know back in the 80s they were paying 23% of their income towards housing. I think the 30% was pushed up, of course, I think by developers and people who wanted your landlords and so forth. I like to get back to that day and age where people are able to pay a lot less than 30%, closer to 20%, so they can thrive and flourish and save and live a decent lifestyle, no matter who they are. And if they're not making income, they still need to be housed. So that's how I look at it. And there's no housing available for that kind of wage earners. And
we used to have Mitchell-Lama. We don't have Mitchell-Lama anymore.
Right. Which, if I may address, Susan, first of all, thank you for your thoughts and for your views, because they're really important. And I'd like to address the fact that we really are not partisan. We've worked with Tunnels to Towers to who are also behind the 100% affordability 5 World Trade Center. We are looking for preference for 9/11 survivors who are currently being priced out of the neighborhood that they have been asked to return to, and are now sick and have passed away because we now know that it was toxic to be here. And many of these people are now being priced out of downtown. The other part of it is we are asking for a variability, if in terms of the income, as John was saying, in terms of affordability. So we do want deeply affordable, so people who are city workers or who are not paid properly, and such as nurses or teachers, that they can live in our neighborhood as well. But also people who are maybe professionals or whatnot who still can't. Downtown, the prices are exorbitant. And we've had a crazy outburst of luxury apartment buildings and such that we even had 2 buildings just last month go into foreclosure because they could not rent at the asking price because the asking price was too high. So we do have this affordability crisis downtown at different levels. exactly what you were saying. And so it's important that and it's important to the coalition as well, that this is considered when we come up with a definition. But we all know, I think, that when we use AMI, it does make it much more expensive. Then our teachers can't afford these apartments if that's what we're using. So that's what we mean when we say deeply affordable as well as variation. And it is important because the truth is, as I walk around talking to so many voters, even, people that we
It's
would
not
otherwise
about voting. It's really not about voting.
No, it's not. But my point is that when I talk to them about affordability, even when I think they would be inclined to say, well, the market is the way that we need to go. When we talk about it, people do understand that right now, what we need is to address affordability because everybody's being pushed out. Middle income as well, middle and upper income is being pushed out of our city. And that's a huge problem.
I would just suggest that maybe you clarify what you mean by affordable to emphasize the needed affordable different bands. And I would just, I think that would be helpful.
I appreciate that.
I think it is a change, and I'm pretty old. So when I first moved here, we needed really affordable, and that was almost all we needed. It has changed. We now have, I'm in a rent control apartment. I could never move to my community today. So I think what we need has changed, and people just need to acknowledge, maybe clarify that a little.
Mm-hmm. And don't you think the AMI is a tool that they use in against? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Victoria. Someone? Okay, Victoria. Sometimes I feel like the AMI tool is used to keep the affordability from happening.
Absolutely.
Well, it's what they get. It's what they get. Subsidies for.
Yeah.
And yes, we're always fighting for more deeply affordable. I'm just mentioning in the other end of affordable, as well as larger apartments that are deeply affordable.
Yeah.
John, we've got a couple of people that have had their hands up for a while, and time's moving on. Steve was the first hand, I think.
I think he's going to talk about Penn Station. Okay.
Yeah, Steve, did you have your hand up to talk about this point?
Thank you. Yes, thank you. I don't know why my video stopped. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you have a question for Victoria?
Okay. Well, she was mentioning the toxic situation down there. That's what they're trying to create up here at Penn Station. There's supposedly a press conference on the church steps next Thursday at 11:30. I don't know how to put this on the chat. I did send John the flyer because it had been brought up a couple of meetings, and I went ahead and made a flyer and passed out hundreds of these at Penn South, who is also against the expansion, except for one guy.
Steve, we're going to talk about Penn Station a little later. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll definitely make sure that gets out.
I just want to mention that the church on our block does help the homeless, and there's a homeless center on our block as well. So I'm very interested to hear, I've been hearing a lot of great stuff from everyone today. So that's what's going on. We have a rally maybe next Thursday at 11:30 at the church.
Right.
And
Steve, you'll talk about Penn Station in a little while, so we'll catch up more about that in a minute. And Rob, you had your hand up, and then we'll have to move on to the next topic.
Yeah, just quickly. So my passion is around this issue of affordable housing and clearly defining it. I think Victoria made good points when she said a tiered structure. If I'm understanding that right, it's making affordable housing available to different incomes, right? I do believe, and this is something I've fought since my days at Picture the Homeless, that area median income is a flawed calculation, and all it ends up doing is saturating our markets with market rate housing, and that's not the true need in the city. So I think somebody mentioned earlier also that education is needed. We need to educate the public. And I would disagree with you, Susan, that it is a voting issue because elected officials who are in bed with developers keep coming in and riding that horse of a AMI. It has to change. I had a very wicked fight 15 years ago with Vito Lopez when he asked me, how would you change it? And I looked him straight in the eye and I said, use zip code. The entire goddamn country is mapped by zip code. If you want the true area median income of an area, use zip code, right? So it's something that's problematic at the federal, state, and city level. We have to get them all in a room, and then we have to educate them to make that change. But I agree that we have to define affordable. I started saying we need housing for people with incomes of $50,000 and less. That's the way I define it. So
Yeah.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you. Thank
I
you so
think
much.
this
Yeah.
topic needs to be expanded probably at the next meeting. Victoria, you might like to come back and we'll talk further about it, but we do need to move on.
Yeah.
Thank you
And
so
we're
much.
we're now going to be speaking about the work that's happening at NYCHA or not happening at NYCHA. Marnie, do you want to take over here?
Marty? Marty, are you with us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Go right ahead.
Hear me?
Yeah, you're coming in and out.
Oh shoot. Hello?
Yeah,
Can you hear
we
me?
got you now. We got you.
I'm frozen.
There you are.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Listen, I just, you can hear me? Okay. Listen, I just thought it was important for advocates like Marquise Jenkins and also Ramona Ferreyra. Marquise is an organizer with the Residents to Protect Public Housing. Ramona is an organizer with Safe Section 9. I think people on this call, like when I talk to people running for office, when I talk to political groups, people in this like Chelsea District 3 area, I mean, people think that like, you know, people at Fulton and Elliott Chelsea want RAD and want privatization, and they actually don't. And if you would listen to like Marquise and Ramona, you'll hear that, you know, they both have groups that have many public housing tenants, and people are really against privatization because it's going to like increase the rents. It's not going to give them Section 9 protections, and it's going to be really bad for them. So I just wanted Marquise and Ramona to talk, you know, given the fact that the Preservation Trust legislation passed this week, which is like really, it's going to be really challenging for public housing tenants. So Ramona and Marquise can speak about this.
Okay. Ramona, who wants to go first?
Hi, Ramona, you got here before me, so I should take a step back.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. So I think the first thing that we wanted to do was to actually share with you guys a video that we produced, which is 3 minutes long.
Let me get you a co-host so you can do that.
Perfect. And one thing that I'll highlight before I actually start speaking is that many of the problems that you are all discussing regarding housing insecurity and housing unaffordability are actually addressed by public housing. So this idea of 30% rent cap, the idea of tenant inclusion in decision making, these are the things that public housing automatically gives us. So I would ask everyone to really reframe how they're addressing homelessness and to, as much as possible, support the rehabilitation of public housing. I myself started Safe Section 9 about 2 years ago and have worked in co-leading our PPH as well. And we really try as hard as possible to bring this issue to the forefront. So here's a short explainer.
Can you share your computer's audio?
Ramona?
Ramona, can you share your computer's audio because we can't hear the audio?
Sorry, my dog started barking.
No, if you share the audio from your computer,
Public housing.
it will work.
In Chicago. But the United States is 9.
Are you guys able to hear the video now?
So if you click on the share part, there's a little speaker. Ramona, if you share on, Click the little speaker and it will share the audio or the video directly from your computer. And you can be muted at the same time.
Okay, let me try that.
You see the little speaker in the green bar? The share bar?
Start again. So you said click on share screen.
Yeah, share the video.
Okay.
And then when the toolbar comes up,
Okay.
there's a little speaker with a slash through it. Click on that and that will share your computer's audio so you can be on mute.
Actually not seeing that, but let me see. I can just see myself unmuted. That's fine.
Okay.
Be recovered.
Don't sweat it, Ramona.
A lot of people associate public housing with major cities like New York and Chicago, but the United States' 970,000 public housing units are spread out over all 50 states, with 20% located in rural areas. All public housing is paid for under Section 9 of the Housing Act of 1937, which allows the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, to distribute taxpayer funds directly to each city's housing authority. The law's stated purpose was to address, quote, the acute shortage of decent, safe, and sanitary dwellings for families of low income, end quote. Section 9 caps rent at 30% of resident income and gives residents the right to organize into resident councils to determine how money will be spent within their developments. Under Fariello LaGuardia, NYCHA became the first agency in the US to provide publicly funded housing. Although welfare recipients and people of color were barred from these early developments, years of pressure by housing advocates eventually loosened these restrictions. And by the 1950s, working class Black and Puerto Rican residents had begun to move in. During the fiscal crises of the 1970s, these increasingly diverse developments became targets for budget cuts by politicians pandering to white anger toward the gains of the civil rights movement. Nixon halted all construction of new public housing in 1973. And in 1974, Congress created the Section 8 voucher program to push low-income tenants into the private market. Under the Reagan administration, HUD's budget was slashed even further, from $36 billion in 1980 to $15 billion in 1988. Reagan justified these cuts by stoking resentment towards public housing residents with the myth of the welfare queen, a person of color living lavishly off taxpayer assistance. As this stereotype took root, the combined effects of disinvestment and the crack epidemic devastated public housing and the lives of people who lived there. Instead of providing adequate funding, politicians used this crisis as evidence that public housing was an outdated model. With the Hope 6 program, President Clinton proved just as willing as Republican administrations before him to keep up the cruel cycle. Hope 6 provided grants for housing authorities to demolish existing developments, but they were not required to replace them with the same number of low-income units. Between 1993 and 2010, 98,592 units were demolished under Hope 6. Only 12% of those displaced actually moved back into their homes. When the Faircloth Amendment was passed in 1998, it made the number of Section 9 units at that time the absolute limit to the national public housing stock. So today, HUD can't fund any construction of public housing above that 1998 level. Decades of austerity have left NYCHA with $40 billion in unmet capital needs. Residents experience this shortfall every day through shoddy repairs, chronic utility outages, and life-threatening mold and pest infestations. Following a familiar playbook, elected officials and NYCHA CEO Greg Russ now want to use their own neglect of public housing as an excuse to eliminate Section 9 through privatization schemes like RAD and the Blueprint for Change.
Nice, Ramona.
Thank you. So Safe Section 9 is a tenant-led organization. We are all volunteers fighting to bring funding back to public housing. And this coming week, we're actually headed to DC on Monday. I will definitely drop the link in the video. I also wanted to share with you guys the demands that I think should be something that folks working against homelessness and for housing security could sign on to. So I thought that this group would appreciate that. So these are the collective solutions that tenants have worked on over the last year. One is to stop all types of privatization of Section 9 housing. Another is to look at the impact that privatization has had. One that I think speaks to the values of this group is the fact that when a NYCHA facility or project actually privatizes, we see a double, an actual amount of evictions are doubled. We want tenants to be able to participate in Section 18 approval processes. This is what demolished Chicago and is currently demolishing Minneapolis. We want a federal state of emergency for Section 9. We're looking for that reinstatement of federal and tenant oversight. We want 80 billion minimum. That was originally in the Build Back Better plan. And we are now, Chuck Schumer has seen these demands. He got these back in March. And now all of the folks that we're going to be meeting in DC are going to be getting them as well and asked to actually sign on to them. One thing that I'm certain would help the homelessness issue in New York City is that we were able to restore our Section 9 housing stock to the 1999 numbers. So there's an estimate that we actually will be losing 10,000 public housing units across the country every single year. Not to mention the project-based Section 8 challenges that you guys were mentioning earlier. We want these units to be green and sustainable. We're also trying to make sure that there's a lot of racist and derogatory beliefs surrounding public housing. One of the questions that I had listening to everyone speak was, why is public housing being ignored by a group that's fighting against homelessness, right? Why aren't we talking to each other and working together to create housing that will always have income capped? And that comes with an infrastructure of tenant empowerment and tenant participation. We're still working on these two. These two are new, and they address the fact that public housing tenants don't get any credit for paying their rent. And we want to see how we can get that added to our credit agencies. And then the affordable housing conversation that you guys are having is also one that we see as a threat to Section 9 housing, because there isn't really a definition that meets the needs of disabled, elderly, retired, and working poor in America. And we think that AMI is a mess. I don't want to have to curse this early in the morning. But again, those are the national demands. For New York specifically, we're asking that they do a forensic audit because we found that NYCHA has only spent 6% of the money that City Council is giving them and about 10% of what the state is giving them. We're then asking for a new organizational plan that doesn't rely on privatization. And then finally, we want to get Greg Russ, who is the NYCHA chairman, to be fired. So I'm going to pass it on to Marquise, and we can address questions, I guess, after Marquise, if you want to do it that way. I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page with you. Yeah, definitely. About the AMI. Okay.
Thank you so much, and thank you for teeing it up, Ramona. And it's great to see so many familiar faces today. Ramona gave a great history, so I'll try to pick up where she left off. The name of my group is called the Residents to Preserve Public Housing, and we have been fighting since NYCHA introduced the Blueprint for Change proposal in 2020. When we looked at so a bunch of residents came up and restarted and said, NYCHA wants to introduce this major plan and we have no idea what's going on. Will you help us? And so a bunch of tenant association presidents from all across the city came together and started to dissect this Blueprint for Change proposal. And after careful review and after talking to experts, many of the experts who are on this call today, we confirmed that this was a dangerous plan for us to implement. We outlined 4 reasons why we were against this plan. The first is that residents were not included in the creation of this plan, which was required by the federal rules and regulations that govern resident participation, which clearly states that residents must be involved from conception. The second reason is not only were residents not involved, but this plan was being pushed during a global pandemic. Public housing residents were hit twice as hard by COVID-19, both in contracting COVID-19, but also in COVID-19 related deaths. We are still on this day in a pandemic. Now, as you heard recently, our state Senate and Assembly just passed a critical piece of the Blueprint for Change proposal, the Public Housing Preservation Trust, which is a new entity, a public benefits corporation. And if the governor signs this legislation into law, the Public Housing Preservation Trust will have the ability to do two things. One, convert our units from Section 9 to Section 8. And two, take the funding that they receive from the Section 8 voucher, also known as the Tenant Protection Voucher, and leverage that funding to take on what they call a bond, which operates like a mortgage. We looked at the legislation, and the legislation was very clear. In the event of a default, if the Public Housing Preservation Trust is not able to pay back loans that it borrows, the city and the state may step in. Well, you say, hey, well, that's a good idea. The city and the state will back it if there is a default on a loan. Except the next sentence says that the city and the state has no obligation to do so. So what happens if the government decides to stop funding Section 8 in the same way that they decided not to fund Section 9? Well, in this program, not only do we not get the repairs that we need, but now we have debt that has the ability to put us into foreclosure. And as Ramona beautifully stated, public housing is the solution to all of the challenges that we've discussed today. But if this plan goes through, in combination with the rental assistance demonstration program, there will be no more public housing in New York City. In other words, every single NYCHA apartment will be converted from Section 9 public housing to Section 8. Now, we are incredibly disappointed at how our legislators introduced this legislation. The residents who preserve public housing stood side by side with Save Section 9 and many organizations, including organizations on this call, to stop this legislation from moving forward. When it was introduced in 2020, we mobilized, we organized, we testified, and we stopped the legislation from moving forward. They brought the legislation back again in 2021, and guess what? We organized, we mobilized, we testified, and we stopped the legislation from moving forward. They brought the legislation back in 2022, we organized, we mobilized, and we stopped the legislation from moving forward. And if it wasn't clear enough, they tried to pass the bill through the state budget. And we organized, we mobilized, we testified, and we stopped that from happening. And here we are in the final hour, just before the legislative session is about to end. And the mayor decides to jump in and put his thumb on the scale, completely ignoring what residents have been saying for 3 years. We are against this plan, to be clear, not because we believe that Build Back Better money is going to come. We desperately need that Build Back Better. But we also know that this plan puts us in a far worse state than we are currently in. What this plan does is it creates a machine out of public housing to generate profit for the private industry. Recently, just yesterday, I read an article where the state legislature passed a package, a $10 billion package deal for the private market, and allocated only $350 million for public housing. Now, our legislators will quickly tell you that our federal government has given up on us. But they failed to mention that not only did our federal government give up on us, but our state and our city gave up on us. Anyone who tells you that there is not enough money for public housing is delusional. The mere fact is that we have funding. If the governor can spend $600 million on a stadium, if she can give a $10 billion kickback, then we can find the money that we need for public housing. You don't need to be a mathematician to figure out how do we generate $40 billion. I will close by saying that the Blueprint for Change proposal is a 10-year plan. So the Housing Authority and all the proponents of the blueprint want us to believe that this is the only way that we can generate $40 billion. But if the blueprint plan is a 10-year plan, that means we need to generate about $4 billion a year. And I find it ridiculous that anyone can say we cannot generate $4 billion a year from our city, our state, and our federal government. So I want to thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak about this critical issue. I want to let you know that we are continuing to fight to stop this legislation from moving forward. And we are continuing to educate residents so that they can be involved and so that we can expand our movement to make sure that residents are truly making the decisions about the future of public housing. Hey,
Thank
John, I
you.
think you're muted.
Thanks, Marquis. That was brilliant. And of course, we need to follow up on this discussion too. And the time is moving on. We've still got two more topics to talk
one more
about.
thing, just on this topic. Thanks for the impassioned speeches, both of you. What would you have us? Where can we help? What do you want from us? What's your asks? Tell us. You're muted, Marquis.
Yeah, Marquise, you go first.
Yes. So the governor has not signed this bill. We believe that she will, but that doesn't mean we can continue to put pressure, continue to call, to write letters, to find people who have her ear, to get her to change her mind and stop this legislation. And then I think the other piece is we need incredible help with doing research. Our next battle is going to be with HUD. So even though the state legislature may have passed this Public Housing Preservation Trust, HUD still needs to give the Housing Authority permission to move these units into the Preservation Trust. And so we want to make sure that we understand Section 18, the legislation or the mechanism that is being used to transfer these units so that we can have strong arguments to push back against this. And education, continuing to spread our messages, our resources to residents is always helpful.
Right, Marquis, maybe at the next meeting next month, you might talk more about what we need to do in terms of Section 18 and the mechanism that you've just referred to. And that might help us too. So that would be great.
And Ramona?
Again, thank you for having me. And I look forward to provide anything you need to help us in this fight.
Yes.
I would just add that on the Safe Section 9 end, we're headed down to DC with these demands. If anyone has the bandwidth to review them and can help us, amplify the connection between homelessness, housing insecurity, and Section 9, that would be really appreciated. And then the second piece is we have a petition, which I dropped in the chat, along with way too many links, which asks for the firing of Greg Russ and the halt to this privatization plan. If you guys could sign that, that would be very supportive.
Sure, absolutely. All right, how many people are you expecting to take down with you to DC?
We have 80 tenants. Right now, we did 1 week of lobby training. We're finishing up 3 more lobby training sessions this week. And we expect to have 75 tenants. And then we also have subject matter experts like Take Root Justice, Justice for All Coalition, and other public housing representatives from Memphis, Minneapolis, New York City, and yeah, that's it.
And Ramona, if people are interested in joining you to do the review that you were just talking about, they would email you. Did you put your email in the link in the chat box?
That's the one link I didn't put in.
Okay, great. That would be good. All right.
So,
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Hi, Marquis. It's great to see you again, and great to meet you, Ramona. So you mentioned in your presentation that this will solve homelessness or something to that effect. The right now the challenge is that we find at the housing voucher initiative is that people who are currently homeless cannot get into NYCHA housing because that voucher is not available to them. And they're only, as far as Section 8 is concerned, they're only giving EHVs. So, and those after 10 years are convertible to housing choice vouchers. They are housing choice vouchers. EHVs are housing choice, but they have a 10-year expiration on them. And then they turn into standard housing choice. How do you see this ending homelessness if only the EHVs are available to those currently experiencing homelessness?
So I would say that one of the issues in actually getting people into public housing is that we've created too many silos of applications, and that the current housing authority in New York City is a failure. So when we met with Chuck back in March, I told Chuck that we needed to redesign our public housing authority. And in coming up with that plan, it's been always put on the tenants to create an alternative to the blueprint. And our response was that the alternative is actually bringing back the public housing authority from 1965 to 1970, when NYCHA was at its peak, I would say, behavior. So we actually are in the process of getting those organizational plans to actually just replace computer wherever it says typewriter. This would mean that when someone applies, the wait list is not 7 years under traditional Section 9, which is what we're seeing at this time. So I would say that the main issue in getting all these programs and getting folks into NYCHA is not the lack of units, and it's not the lack of funding. It is the fact that the housing authority is a failure. And if we fix that by creating a new housing authority, which Chuck said that he would support, we will have, a way to get around all of that.
Is part of that eliminating Section 8?
I wouldn't know that he would eliminate Section 8 completely, but at the minimum, it would eliminate project-based Section 8, and it would reopen up applications at night.
No, but is your group advocating to eliminate Section 8, though?
Well,
the housing choice voucher.
Well, people could still use that Section 8 and any type of housing voucher with private landlords.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm worried about, is that if we eliminate the housing choice voucher, we're going to eliminate a lot of housing opportunities for people who are currently experiencing homelessness. Where the challenge is converting that housing choice voucher into a project-based Section 9 voucher. That's what I'm wondering about, because right now we have two instances of people who are directly affected. One is a person who is currently in the shelter here in New York City who is waiting on HPD. Well, she's transferring her voucher up here with HPD, and she wants to get into NYCHA, but the Section 9 won't allow her to convert that because she's currently homeless.
Like, if the housing authority is not accepting that voucher, then we should.
The housing authority is going to convert her Georgia voucher into a housing choice voucher here in New York City. People who are currently experiencing homelessness in the DHS or DV system cannot get a NYCHA voucher. They have to get the EHV voucher, and that is not convertible to a NYCHA voucher. Okay, so since the lady from Georgia is moving her Section 8 voucher up here, HPD, that's fine. Okay, and she can go get a non-project based apartment with that. But when we say we can solve the the homeless situation in New York City, we have to be careful, because there are directly impacted people in this room and around us who are currently experiencing homelessness, that will give them a false hope that they can take their EHV voucher, convert it to a project-based voucher, and get housing.
I want to clarify for a second that what you're describing is the bureaucratic hurdles that have been created within HUD. What we're talking about is centering the solution of Section 9 to eliminate those hurdles and to actually simplify the transfer and the access to public housing. So even the buildings—
It's not going to simplify it.
Hold on.
There's no way it's going to simplify it. That's going to make it harder for people to move around the city.
I got a suggestion. This sounds like a great thing to tear into. Why don't we wrap up, finish off our agenda? Why don't we stay on and discuss this afterwards?
Well, thanks. And of course, everyone knows that the Penn Station expansion will cause homelessness, and we're trying to prevent it. So I appreciate everybody's efforts on this meeting today. As what I'm being told is this rally is happening on whatever day that is.
It's a press conference, I think, Steve.
Yeah, press conference, and we want to get people there. So we're trying to rally the neighborhood as well to make it a better press conference.
Well, what Steve is pushing, and he's been working very hard with, is the Penn Station expansion. It's a LSD, Empire Station Development Corp, which is part of our government, working with Vornado to do a river-to-river commercial district, which we don't need. We need housing. This is the core issue of our problem. These relationships between government and private partnerships, and that comes right off of what Marquis was talking about, and Ramon. So anyway, just take note of where this rally is. I think it's in our agenda as well. Sorry, Steve, you're not, your internet must have went out. Lawrence, did you want to add anything briefly?
No, nothing. There's nothing new on that except for, as I think I wound up being in a meeting that nobody else was in, a CB5 meeting that was very badly announced. I turned out to be the only community member in the meeting. This was about a month ago, and since then, and what they were talking about, it was Vornado that was the major point there, and they're the ones doing all the speaking. And it was quite annoying to find out that the plans that they're currently pulling off right now at Penn Plaza. I don't know if anybody's been tried to get into Penn Station recently, but it's very difficult now. It's much more difficult than it's ever been. The sidewalk, which was some 35 feet wide, is now about 8 feet wide. And it's cordoned off with a very, very narrow alleyway, incredibly dangerous. That they're getting away with murder is just very annoying. And unfortunately, I have to jump right now because I have a meeting I have to get right into.
Okay, thanks,
Thank you all.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
We are pushing on a rally. We feel like we have Penn Station, a 4-point rally. We feel like we have the Penn Station covered with a lot of speakers and so forth. We have NYCHA with the help of Ramona and Marquis. We should make that a success. And we want to speak at 2 other locations, being Midtown, where the hotel boom began. And also we want to wrap it up.
Well, I just want to mention, I just dropped out. I met with Carolyn Maloney and Nadler, who were both at the event Saturday. When I approached Carolyn Maloney with this Penn Station expansion, she knew almost nothing about it and was very interested in learning about it. I got her email. I'm sending it to her. Nadler said his office is on it. I actually played guitar with Eric Botcher, which was one of my Jennifer Lawrence from Don't Look Up obsessions. Why isn't Eric helping us? Anyway, he is helping. He's a good guy, but he's probably involved in this political mix. Who knows why? We need people like that to speak up in the community. I go around to these neighborhood businesses, and they actually don't believe this is going to happen. So we even got a write-up in Cranes. We got the write-up in the Daily News. They still don't believe this is happening. So, I am going to send Maloney the thing. Also, I heard recently Mayor Adams talked about turning hotels that were in blighted areas, which he basically was saying maybe they caused the blight, maybe they didn't. But, since they declared the Penn Station area, a blighted area. Why aren't they turning the Hotel Pennsylvania into a hotel for the homeless, which is what Mayor Adams says he's going to do? So I just thought I'd throw that little snarky thing in. And everybody here was brilliant today, and I really appreciate it and got a lot out of this meeting. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being here, Steve. Sharon, you want to
Yeah,
close?
we just had two other topics that we didn't get to. One of them is quite important. It'll only take me a minute. Ted Houghton isn't with us, as you know. He's the president of Gateway. And what he wanted us to know that on Thursday night, at just after midnight, the New York State Assembly did vote to approve the bill that he was speaking about last meeting, and that was the regulatory relief to facilitate the conversion of distressed hotels in New York City. And this is what Steve was just referring to now. And it means that they'll be transferred into officially affordable apartments to low-income and formerly homeless tenants. And just means now that Kathy Hochul has to sign the bill. And what it actually does, it amends the New York State multiple dwelling law to allow some transient hotels to be used as affordable or permanent housing while still retaining their existing certificate of occupancy. It eliminates the need to do cost prohibitive gut rehabs. It makes 100 existing New York City hotels in light manufacturing zones now eligible for use as permanent housing, as long as they are within 2 blocks of the zones that allow residential use. And the bill codifies precedents previously used in the 1990s to convert hotels to flagship supportive housing residents like Times Square and the Prince George. And then, of course, the hotel conversions have to do the following. They have to be affordable to low income, that's 60% AMI or lower, and formerly homeless households. They have to be operated by a responsible nonprofit, approved by the city. They have to be approved by and subject to regulatory agreement with HPG. They have to be subject to rent stabilizations, tenant protections, and approved by both sides of collective bargaining agreement if the hotel is unionized, and not located in any industrial business zones. That was that one. And then the other topic we didn't cover was more about the Medicare, and Nancy was going to talk about that this time, but hopefully we can continue that with the next meeting. So I think that's where we can end. And I know some people are going to stay on, so you're all very welcome to do that, but we'll officially end the meeting now and stop the recording. So thank you again, everyone, for coming, and we'll see you in July.
Thank you.